Third, fourth, and fifth grade leaders, we're preparing for March 8th in our series called It's All About Jesus. In this series, we're taking a look at Esther and Nehemiah and Malachi, and then Jesus as a way to help us know what God was doing throughout time to help prepare us for his son, Jesus, to come and rescue us. In our lesson today, we're going to be taking a look at the book of Nehemiah, the first 6 chapters of Nehemiah. What we see happening in Nehemiah is the cupbearer to the king Artaxerxes in the nation of Persia, which is one of the nations where God's people were exiled to. While in Persia, Nehemiah gets word that the walls in Jerusalem are down and that the city is not safe. Now, this is a big deal. This is a bigger deal than, hey, just a fence post came off kind of thing. This is a big deal because Jerusalem is the city center for the promised land, which is where God had promised for his people to be, and so they're always trying to get back there. Not only that, it was where he had the temple built, the one and only temple, so that the people would know where God was dwelling among them. And so when Nehemiah hears that the city walls are down, it's more like us getting a phone call that said that our childhood home has burned to the ground. It would make you sad. It would move you. It would upset you. Maybe not upset you, depending upon what memories you have about that, but it would definitely make you feel something. We're not talking about just like something is broken. We're talking about this. The people are not safe. There are no walls. There's going to have to be an act of God for the people to be taken care of that are living there in Jerusalem, which are God's chosen people. And so when Nehemiah hears this, he is very moved and upset, so much so that he fasts and prays for several days. And as he's fasting and praying, he begins to look like he had been fasting and praying, like his skin is not a good color. He's beginning to look like he hasn't eaten in a long time. And so when he returns to the king, Artaxerxes, as his cupbearer, the king notices that there's something wrong with Nehemiah. And so he asks him, what's wrong? And Nehemiah is able to share with him what he's heard, what's going on, how he feels about all of this. And this is a huge God portion of this story. God uses Artaxerxes as a way to carry out his plan for God's people. He allows Artaxerxes decides to send Nehemiah back to Jerusalem. Now, Artaxerxes didn't have to do that. He doesn't worship the one true God. He, besides having a relationship with Nehemiah, he doesn't necessarily believe all of the things, but he does know that if his city walls were down, they would need somebody to build it. And so God uses an unlikely character like Artaxerxes to accomplish his plan. We see this over and over and over and over again throughout time, that God restores people and helps use them to be a part of what he has designed for all of us, which is to know that Jesus is our Savior. So Artaxerxes releases Nehemiah. Not only does he release him, he sends him with funds to help build the wall and an army to help protect as they are preparing to rebuild the wall. And so when Nehemiah gets there, he takes a couple of days to just look around. And then he's able to go up on the city walls and really do a good survey of what's wrong and what needs to be fixed and what needs to be done. Now, here's another crazy way that God used Nehemiah. Ezra was the leader of the people in Jerusalem at that time. Ezra was a great leader. He was a prophet. He was a great teacher. He was a great encourager. He was not a great builder. He was not an engineer. Nehemiah is an engineer, and a great leader of people. And so God used Nehemiah, like he did Esther, for such a time as this to do exactly what God had designed for his people. God used Nehemiah and his skill set to be able to care for his people in a way that Ezra wasn't able to do for people. And so when Nehemiah comes in, he assigns people based on where they live a space within the wall that they are in charge of rebuilding, and he gives them the instructions on how to rebuild it and what to do and where the gates need to go, and the gates were really important in the town. And so without Nehemiah being able to do that, I don't know that Ezra would have ever been able to instruct people on how to do that. Obviously, if God designed that, Ezra would have been able to do that, but Nehemiah was the person that God had designed to do that. Now, in your small group, you're going to have kind of a diagram that you can share with kids as we are talking about the wall around Jerusalem. This is a diagram that shows you what the wall would have looked like along with the gates. You'll notice that the gates have very specific names. Those names on the gates are their function. It's not some crazy meaning. The fish gate is where they sold fish. The sheep gate is where they stored the sheep for sacrifice and to keep the sheep out of the city, because you and I know the sheep wandering around would be kind of messy. There's the horse gate, and so that's where the horses came in and out, and where they would be stored outside of the city if that was necessary. The water gate is where they brought water in and out of the city. The fountain gate was where they bathed and cleansed themselves. The dung gate was where the refuse and the trash was taken out there into the Kidron Valley, which was just right outside of the gate. The valley gate is just that. It's a gate outside of the valley. The old gate was where the priests and their families would enter into the temple to do their job in taking care of the temple. So as you can see, each of these gates had a function, and each family group who was in charge of building the walls was in charge of helping rebuild the gates as well. And it was very necessary that it was built the way it was built to protect the city and to give it the function that it needed so that the city could thrive the way it needed to thrive. And so it was really important that everybody did their job the way Nehemiah kind of laid out their job. And now, what we also see is that because Nehemiah was focused on what they were doing, it didn't take very long at all for them to rebuild these city walls. They say 54 days was all that it took for those walls to be rebuilt. And next week, we're going to concentrate on what happens to the people after they see God's provision in helping take care of those city walls. For this time, we want to know that God uses Nehemiah and his people to help restore the city so that he could build up the city that would be the city that would accept Jesus as Savior, and to help prepare that city to be the fortress again, potentially, that was going to see Jesus ride in on a donkey, as we learned about in Zechariah recently. So in your small group time, you have a jelly bean game that looks like this. It looks like you guys were having fun playing that this week. It just has a bunch of questions, and the kids have had fun answering and learning different things about each other based on those questions. You have some dice and some game pawns to help you move around the game board. It really is just so that you can get to know your kids. We have had 120 new kids. Actually, if you add this week, we probably are up closer to 180 new kids in the last 2 months of All-Star Kids at Parkway Victoria. And so it is important for us to spend some time in our small group trying to get to know our kids a little bit better so that they have a way to relate to each other and with you. And so that's why we'll continue to do activities like this. I also want to give just a quick little pointer to you. Recently I purchased some things that look like this. They are like bookmarks, but they also have some colored like transparency film in there. Some of your kids may have some reading challenges that requires for them to have what's called an overlay so that they can read. These are not fancy ones by any means, but they do have some of the colors that kids would need to be able to do that. There's yellow and green and blue colors in there. And so if having one of these during small group would help a kid be able to read better, then I just wanted you to know what they are for. They are more than just bookmarks. It is to try to help our friends who need some help reading have the tools that they need so that they can read. If that's not what they need, I'd love to talk to them so that I can get the right thing for them. Honestly, at this point, there are so many options of ways that we could go about this. I want to make sure that I get the right thing to help the right kid at the right time. All right. Then your small group activity, you're going to get to kind of play a game of kind of soccer. They call it wall ball, but it's kind of like soccer. You have some poster board that your goalies will have, and you also have this paper. So you'll give each kid a few pieces of paper to wad up to be a ball. And I know this is going to get a little wild and crazy, especially before spring break, but it's okay because we know that spring break is coming. And what the kids are going to do, they're going to get, every person's going to get a ball. And what you're going to do is put the goalies at opposite ends of your area that you're going to use for your playing field. So one goalie on one end and one goalie on another end, and the paper is what they're going to use to defend their goal. And so on your signal, kids are going to throw their paper ball at the opposite team's goalie, with the goal being to get it behind the paper wall. And so the goalies can use the cardboard to swat the balls if they can. If anything goes behind them, though, then the team has made a goal. And obviously, just like in soccer, the number of paper balls that each team has behind them, the person with the most balls wins. Oh, never mind. In the rules here, it says the team with the fewest paper balls behind its goal wins. And so you can use your notes there. Like goalies tried to protect their team's side from the paper balls, Nehemiah and the Israelites built walls to protect Jerusalem. God is in control of everything in heaven and on earth, and he kept his people safe from their enemies. All right, in your memory verse activity, you have some sticky notes. And you should have pencils in your crayon boxes. Encourage kids to use your memory verse, which is in your leader guide. Use your memory verse and write a word or a few words on the sticky notes. And then have them, the instructions say to have the kids put a sticky note on their head and line up, and they're supposed to put themselves in order. If you wanted to stick the sticky notes to other things and put it in order, you are welcome to do that. Honestly, it's just a way to help the kids learn the words, especially because this memory verse has a whole lot of words. All right, and then you can pray with your kiddos and wait with them until their parents come to pick them up, please. We've been talking a little bit about our code, and I want to give you just a little bit of a tip this week on how you can learn to use the word respect within your small group. If you saw in your family resources email this last week. The top article was from Focus on the Family, and it talked about different character traits that you can help build within your family that help show the kids what respect looks like. So I'm going to use those notes as a way to help you find a way to define what respect looks like. And this week we're going to concentrate on the first one, which is called forgiveness and grace. And who doesn't need that? First off, who doesn't need forgiveness and the opportunity at grace? And then on top of that, we all need to learn to acknowledge when we could be wrong or we did something wrong. And when we learn to do that in relationship with people, it looks something like this. Say that something happened within your small group and you had to raise your voice a little bit and you weren't comfortable with the level of how you had to raise your voice. The way you could go back to either the individual that you did that to or said those things to, or the group as a whole, is say, hey guys, I lost my cool today. I am so sorry. Would you please forgive me? Next time when I am beginning to feel that way, I'm going to take a minute and take a breath before I respond to you. And give them the chance to say, oh, I forgive you, and give them the chance to respond. There's a couple of things that happen in this. First off, you are modeling for them how to acknowledge when you do something wrong. So that's good for you. That's good for the kids around you. But the other thing that you are helping do is to show them that you acknowledge that you're wrong at times. It's so important for kids to know that when they do something wrong, there's a way that they can respond to that. And it doesn't have to mean that they lash out at everybody and they take everybody's heads off. In fact, I've seen in my own family that we have modeled this for our children always, this way of speaking to each other and asking for forgiveness. They have done that with each other as siblings. They have done that in their friend groups. All three of them have done that in their friend groups. In fact, it's the expectation that they have of their friends, that their friends would acknowledge that that's how they respond to each other. In fact, they sometimes get really upset when other friends don't have that model or know how to respond in the same way. And so I know that as we begin to do this, our kids will begin to pick this up, not only in your small group, but also in your home. And what a wonderful way to show humility to your kids. And also how to respond when you do something wrong. All of us lose our cool sometimes. All of us say something hateful sometimes. All of us do something wrong. It's important to acknowledge it, ask for forgiveness, and then give a solution for what you plan to do different next time, so that when they see that it might happen again, they can trust that that's how you're going to respond because you've acknowledged that's what you plan to do. Thank you so much for leading. I can't wait to see how you begin to use these tools within your small group. I'll see you guys soon.